Please like our videos, share them with your friends, and lastly, subscribe to our channel. Mark started out like any other high school kid, but with a passion for motocross. He was a nationally ranked amateur on the verge of turning pro when a serious injury in college forced him to change course. With longevity in mind, he stayed in school and earned his bachelor's degree from Michigan State University's School of Communication. While in college, Mark questioned whether it was the right fit and even explored military service. But his extensive list of injuries, 10 plus broken bones, 19 breaks, 5 surgeries, 2 plates, 18 screws, 3 dislocations, and a TBI that should have been fatal, made that path unlikely. His first job landed him at the Los Angeles Times in new business development, where he was tasked with finding the next big thing to replace newspapers. At the time, the internet department was just one guy in an 11,000-person company. Mark put together a massive promotion that tested the limits of the systems, but when politics took over, he decided to move on. After 1.5 years, he left and started his own business. For years, Mark ran his business while frequently crossing paths with people in the fire service. Getting hired in that field without connections was tough, so he put it on hold. Eventually, he and his wife moved to North Carolina, where he earned his EMT certification and finally got on with the department. While working as a firefighter, Mark co-built a motocross track and got involved in training individuals within the Army Special Missions Unit doing off-road mobility. Seeing a lack of places for these professionals to pass on their knowledge, he built a training range, only to have it shut down due to politics and local corruption. A second attempt in another county was also blocked. On the third try, Mark found real support from the county and military personnel, both active and retired. He began building a training facility designed to shorten the learning curve for those deploying and provide a space for veterans to share their expertise. The facility included DZs, HLZs, off-road trails, a 1-mile range with 300-plus feet of elevation change, and plans for 360-degree ranges with malleable shoot houses. It was an hour from Fort Bragg, perfectly positioned for training. But as Mark learned the hard way, even people in your wedding can take things from you. Now, with 25-plus years in the fire service, Mark has worked his way up to rescue captain. His team is the one you call when no one else can figure it out. They handle structure fires, firefighter rescues, high-low-angle rope rescues, extrications, confined space incidents, hazmat, water rescues, missing persons, and more. He also serves as a drone pilot and manages reporting, staffing, payroll, and training coordination. The job is unpredictable. Working 24-hour shifts, Mark and his team can go from eating or sleeping to full speed in minutes. Calls from panicked civilians often provide inaccurate information, meaning they rarely know what they're walking into. They've even arrived on scene minutes after a shooting, before law enforcement. Unlike firefighting, where crews can pull out if conditions become too dangerous, rescue doesn't have that option. If someone is trapped, they get them out, no matter what. The toughest part? Seeing worst-case scenarios daily and then watching his own kids drive off for the first time. For 23 years, Mark never knew if the people he helped lived or died. Only recently has there been a way to get limited updates on EMS patients. But at the core of everything, the job is simple. Help people. In any situation, when everything is falling apart, Mark and his team step in and make it better. That's why he does what he does.
All right, guys, welcome to Coffee Talk, the Silencio Coffee podcast. Today we have a special guest, Mark Atkeson, and you just saw his video about his history and his current status in his life. So we're going to ask him some questions and kind of drive this conversation a little bit. We'll get him to tell us a little bit about himself, his background, and what he's doing now, and maybe even his future goals. So without any further ado, Mike, welcome. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good, bro. What's up,
Mark?
Mark?
How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So I'm just going to start with, let me look at my notes here. Let's talk about you starting out in high school and with motocross, like that kind of really interests me. I know we talk about that on the side all the time. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you get started in it?
Yeah. So I had a neighbor down the road who had a dirt bike, just rode around I grew up out in the middle of absolutely nothing. And he'd ride up down the road and everything. And I just got super interested in it. Pretty much bothered my parents for a couple of years until they finally got one for me. All I wanted to do was race. Bothered them long enough that they got my sister a horse, and it was kind of one of those like, okay, so we each have our thing. She wanted to start doing stuff with the horse, and I said, well, if she gets to do that, I get to race. So get a different bike, started racing, and just I liked it. It was just I liked the fact that there was never a finish to it. There's never you were never just done getting better. You can tell by my list of injuries. I'm not really afraid of injuries, maybe not as much as I should be, but as much excitement or as much adrenaline as you want is in your right hand. So I did that for around a little over 10 years, maybe. Went all the way up through, traveled around the country some. The sport itself was younger when I did it, of course. Now it's pretty big business. And it takes a lot of money to get into it now. It's still in motorsports one of the least expensive, but it takes a lot of money to get into it now. Back then it wasn't as bad, but we went everywhere up and down the eastern seaboard. I raced in everywhere from Florida to Michigan, where I grew up, Tennessee for amateur nationals, stuff like that, and did a couple Supercross races that were the amateur side of it. And then I was going to get, I went to college after my first year and was racing for the summer. And I was going to take a year off college and just try 1 year pro. And I wound up just really wadding up pretty good. I was chasing a guy who was, he was a current pro, and I was staying right with him. And I was like, yeah, I can do this. And just a fluke, and, wadded up really bad, broke my shoulder blade in like 4 places. And I just thought, you know what, maybe I should just stick to college. So hung it up just because it was kind of a bit time intensive. It takes a lot for the training side of it. So hung it up and just decided to go to school instead and just finish that up.
Yeah, probably not a bad decision. I know a few other guys. I've got a cousin who was really into it, and he was like breaking bones all the time, getting wrecks. And his sister, my other cousin, her husband or ex-husband now, he shattered a femur out there messing around on the bikes with these two, with my cousin, and he built a course in his yard. It was pretty crazy, man. So it is super risky sport. I totally get it. How many broken bones you said again?
I have to always add them up. I think there's around 10 or 11 bones, around almost 20 breaks. Wow. I think I had 5 surgeries, 2 plates, 18 screws, 3 dislocations, and then I had a TBI. Where when I got to the hospital, the neurologist, radiologist said, yeah, I don't know how you even got here. Like, he's like, you should be dead. So
yeah. And you said, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You weren't finished.
No, that's fine. That was it. It was basically like
a pretty bad head injury. You said, right? That was like near fatal.
Yeah, that was that one. I actually drove myself to the hospital, and the neurologist said it was bad enough. It was retro amnesia, which I hadn't even heard of until then, but I couldn't remember events prior. I couldn't remember my kids' names when I got home. So it was
wow.
Pretty big. So
what's the community like? I mean, when you see sports, they say the community or the mindset is there's some hot dogs out there. People are wild, but are people even keeled in the community? Most of the riders, I mean, how do they act? And is there like that peer pressure to outdo someone, to go harder, faster, higher? I mean, what is the general, thoughts running through the community as far as outlook?
I like it. I always did like it. It was a very family family oriented sport. You know, you needed your parents involved to drive you there and back, and gear, and everything's expensive, and entry fees and all that stuff. So your family had to be involved. So it really was a good family atmosphere. People are in general pretty generous with stuff. Something breaks and they've got one, they'll give it to you and you can replace it. They're on the track, you know, it's competitive. You're there for one reason, and that's first place. So there's a weird ethics to it. You can watch it on TV and stuff, and you see Supercross is really where you see it. You can see these guys almost come up and just cut under each other and tap, you know, and they can drive them right off the edge of the track, or they can just tap them as they come in just enough to make them nervous. And there's a real unwritten ethics to how aggressive you can be. In general, it's a very, very respectful. If you watch, like, Supercross is a really neat one. You look at all the guys when they get done, and they'll compliment how well the other guys rode. They'll talk about, you know, he's really going, he's blistering, you know, I had a hard time keeping him behind me. Like, they're very complimentary of that stuff, even though my wife has always thought it was interesting. She says they interview second and third place like they lost. And I said, well, they did. And she's like, but they're like third out of 40. And I'm like, yeah, but first is all you need. Like, that's all you want. So it's a very hard charging driven, but in the same sense, when you come off the track, generally everybody's friends. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Fun that way. Yeah. Yeah. It's a fun sport. A little bit hard on you physically, that's for sure. It kind of eats its young, which, you know.
Yeah, but I can see the respect for, you know, your adversary or whoever, whatever you want to call them, because it is driven by what? It's speed, right? You got to have a certain amount of skill, proficiency. You have that bravery, and so it's not like other sports. I mean, you know, you're talking about downhill racing on a longboard. You're going 100 miles an hour. You're going to compliment the guy who came in second or third, because that's just balls out, right? So that's pretty awesome. And I can see that, having respect for someone who's putting himself out there and actually could die. So very cool, man. And what's the fitness level like? I mean, you know, you are all the guys, because I saw pictures of you. See a lot of these guys are young and lean. Any overweight kind of people? I mean, do you have to be pretty fit? You're going to be pushing your bike, you know?
Oh, they're animals. I think they've, I want to say in the Supercross, you know, they'll wear monitors and stuff sometimes, especially when they're training, they'll do that stuff. I think during the Supercross, their average heart rates are around 160. When they really push hard, they're going up into like almost 180.
Wow.
They're animals. I just like, when I was a kid, the pros, you know, it wasn't quite the same. They just did a lot on their own. Now they've got personal trainers and everything, and nutritionists, the whole 9 yards. But there was a group of the pro riders that rode for factory teams, and they would do the Ironman out in Hawaii just to see who could beat each other. Like, they would just do it for fun.
Just for fun.
Yeah. So I mean, then that's a ridiculous test of physical fitness to me. But yeah, it took a lot out of you physically.
Yeah. And it's changed a lot. I remember when I started running when I was 5 years ago, maybe. And I just remember going to races, and it would be 10 people would show up for a race. Now it's 10,000 or 20,000 or 100,000. Like Beta Breakers, you know, we'd show up. Mercury News, I don't remember what the number was, but maybe 5,000 people. Now you go in, and to compete, you got to pay $50 to get into 100. And it's just changed, even with sponsorships too. I'm sure when you started out, it's not the big money. It was not there. I mean, I think we got a free pair of shoes if you came in like the first 10. You know, so now it's like, you know, giant prizes. So
yeah, it took a lot of money to get to the money.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Like,
for sure.
If you started picking up some sponsorship stuff, some low level, we call them low level sponsorships and stuff, maybe you get a dealer price on bikes. You get, you know, 3 or 4 bikes at dealer cost, and you get a certain allotment for parts, something like that. And then, but that was also built into requirements. You had to go to Florida for Ponca City. You had to go to Loretta Lynn's. You had to go to, I'm sorry, the Winter Olympics was Florida. Ponca City's in Oklahoma. Loretta Lynn's is in Tennessee. We grew up in Michigan, so you had to go to Redbud. You had to go to Silverdome. You had to go, so it was a big list of travel and expense. You were getting a good price on your equipment, but you were spending far more because of it. So
Yeah.
which that's the way a lot of sports work, you know?
Yeah, expensive hobby, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So with all your broken bones and injuries and TBIs and stuff, you still get on that bike every now and again, don't you?
Yeah, I still have one. Um,
And
yeah,
you have some children, well, they're not kids
yeah,
anymore, I know that, but that also do this, right?
yeah, a little bit. They're not as into it as me,
Right.
thankfully. Yeah, I think honestly, the way the sport's progressed, I'd be scared to death. At the speeds they go now and the stuff they do now, um, you know, the bikes are so much faster, the suspension is so much better. It, I'd be really nervous to have a kid doing it, and then just me personally. But yeah, we do. I have learned that I just stay off the tracks because tracks are where I grew up, and that's where I wanted to go fast. So now I just do a lot of like woods and trail stuff. You know, go up. North Carolina has a few places up in the mountains that really nice places to ride.
Yep.
And just try and keep my head screwed on and not pretend I'm 25 again.
Yeah, I can understand that. Um, so you kind of put that on the back burner, right? The motocross stuff, and you went to school. You went to Michigan State.
Yeah, I finished
Right.
it. I started at a small school. Well, not small. It was like 12,000 people, but then transferred to Michigan State. They had the best program for what I went into. So finished there. My last summer, I basically graduated in December. So my last summer I had off, and I thought, well, I'm just never been to Southern California. I'll go there. Moved to Southern California for the summer, and I wound up getting a couple of internships. One was the LA Times. Went back, finished my last semester, and I got brought in under the place where I did the internship. It was called New Business Development. And it was, like I said, the newspapers were dying. This is back in early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
And
was
the
going to say
newspaper,
like, that was kind of well before the mainstream internet, right?
yeah, yeah, the internet was one guy. So
Yeah.
11,000 employees and one guy was the internet. And our job was basically to find products that could basically replace the newspaper, because even back then they saw it going away. They just didn't know how to make any money with anything else. So our job was to take these products and just play with them and try and put together something that the huge sponsors and advertisers would say, oh yeah, I'll throw six figures at that. So
How
that's what
how did you like that environment, that job?
I found out the environment was not for me. Suits and ties wasn't my thing. I kind of, and even today, I'm similar in the fact that like I like to put stuff out there, and everybody's 2 cents counts. Like even at work today, we get off the truck, and I rely on the other guys to say like, "Hey, stupid, look over here." Like I don't see everything, I don't know it, so everybody has 2 cents to put in and say like, "Hey, what do you think of this? What do you want? Hey, don't forget this." Um, and the corporate world was a little bit more self-centered, maybe, I guess. People kind of trying to push their own personal agendas or build their resumes a little harder. And it just wasn't for me, because it wasn't the let's all accomplish something together that I was really hoping it was. So yeah, it just didn't pan out. We put together a promotion that was going to be awesome. We were so excited about it, and it started gaining a lot of traction. A lot of big advertisers. Back in the 90s, we had people. Lexus was going to give us a car. We were giving away 2-week vacations in Hawaii. There's huge stuff as far as prizes go back then. And then everybody started catching wind of it, and then they all wanted to be part of it as well. So all the politics started, and I was like, nah, this is just never going to happen because there's too many hands in it. So
Not yeah, it doesn't really sound, I know you, so I know you're kind of like a team player. Doesn't sound like that was cut out for that type of mindset or lifestyle, right?
yeah, I I get almost confused with like, I get almost confused by, wait a minute, I thought we were all trying to do this,
Yeah.
when people start undermining and stuff like that. I don't do well in those environments. So I figured, all right, I'll punch out of this. This isn't my thing. The suit and tie thing wasn't it.
So then what would you do next, or what did you want to do, I guess?
Well, I actually wound up meeting some people who they had it was a franchise for window coverings, all weird things. So I literally started one of those and basically sold blinds, shutters, shades, stuff like that for a few years out in Southern California. And it was fun because I could make my own decisions and try and, do some of the marketing. I didn't really have to worry about somebody else trying to undercut me inside the group or whatever. Did some of that with a friend of mine from college. He came out and started working with me. And then ended up meeting my wife. I went to the Bay Area for just a while, working for the corporate office, and then met her, and I was kind of tired of the 3-hour time change and everything, not seeing anybody, or hard to talk on the phone to your parents and things like that. So we moved back to North Carolina. When I was in California, I kept meeting people who were in the fire service. And I'd meet these guys and, start talking to them, and they're like, man, it's the greatest job ever. And the more I talked to them, the more I thought, man, what a great way to make a living. Out there was extremely hard to get on. There's so many people. So I kind of put it on back burner, moved here, started doing the business here again. And I thought, I wonder, maybe it's not quite as bad here. And did my EMT course, got that. And then they saw that as motivated enough. I came in at a funny time for where I work. They had half of the group had experience as volunteers. The other half had a college degree, no experience. And what they were trying to figure is, can we take somebody who allegedly can learn and, set a goal, 4 or 5 year, whatever, and accomplish it, and groom them into the employee we want, and do the techniques and the stuff the way we tell them to. The thing they had with the volunteer side was everybody like, well, we do this, and we've done that, and I did this, and they're like, we're not doing that here. This isn't your volunteer department. So I came in right at this little petri dish where they were experimenting with that, and then got hired in '99.
Oh wow! Were you how old were you about that time?
Actually, I was 29.
29. So were you? I'm assuming. So you had to go through like a fire academy or something like that.
Yeah,
Were you
yeah,
like
and they're
about
6 months. No, it's still a decent mix. Right now, they're probably hiring a little bit younger, but not all that much. They're trying to kind of maybe they're trying to lean towards a younger hire, but they still aren't afraid to hire somebody in their even 40s because they bring a lot of life skills, and because the job is such a random. I told my wife the other day, I said, there's almost a topic you can name where I couldn't justify learning about it because of work. And she tried one, and I was like, no, I can totally justify that. And so it's, you never know what you're walking into. You never know what you're going to need. And everybody brings some weird background to the table that nobody else has. So you get a guy who's 40, who's been working HVAC for 10 years, and you go to a call and you're like, hey, come here. What does this thing do? So,
Okay.
they're not totally afraid to hire people, 30s, 40s.
Yeah. The reason I say that is because I know there's probably a big physical aspect, right? A big physical portion where you have to be relatively fit to, do some of the tasks. You always see the firefighters in their bunker gear and all the, equipment, and like, I don't know, what is that, about 60 plus pounds at least?
Yeah. Air pack's around 35, I think, and about another 30 or so for the gear. It's
So
kind of it's very cumbersome. It's hard to move around. So
yeah, so I imagine there's a physical aspect to it as well as agility. Just by you mentioning it's awkward moving around and working in that equipment. So that's why I asked, like, are they looking for younger guys or looking for older guys, or what's the average age, I guess?
Yeah, it's pretty mixed. it's a pretty wide variety, actually. And I think partially just because they, we had two people came out of the last one or the one before last academy. One was a retired civil affairs guy. The other was retired Marines. They were fantastic. They're both right at 40 or so. And the one guy ended up basically, the schedule can be tough. He and his wife were thinking about having a kid or something, and she did really well with her job. And the schedule was really, really taxing on them. He had to have a surgery for something that happened when he was still in the Army. He was gone for about 6 weeks, and he said, I don't know if I want to do this again. I don't know if I want to be gone another 20 years. Right. So he ended up leaving, but it's, the military people that we hire usually fold right in. They are usually our favorites, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah.
They show up just to learn. That's all, this is my job. I mean, what I'm going to do, you point it out and show me and we go. In general, I'd say if they come out of the military, we're really happy about it.
Yeah, they're definitely trainable. I think that's the key trait that most military folks carry that a lot of civilians don't. Right? They're super trainable because that's your whole time in the military. You're always training. You're always learning something new.
Yeah.
It sounds like, just being a firefighter, like on your description there, your story, like you're just a on the fly problem solver, right? That's what it sounds like. So you could, jack of all trades, master of none. There's a lot of verbiage you could apply to that. So,
yeah,
very cool. So then, in this field, you aspire to bigger, better things, greater things, which was, I assume, next for you was rescue. Go rescue.
Yeah, I originally didn't have a whole lot of interest in it. It can be a little overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff to it. But over the years, getting more exposure to it and stuff like that, just became more and more interested in it. And I just kind of like, I don't know, maybe I'm an adrenaline junkie, but I kind of like that whole, you just can't fail. So I kind of like that pressure. It's like when you're doing extrication, you can, we always joke about it. It's, it's plan A, then B, and C, and D, and E. Like you keep going until you succeed. You don't ever stop. So it's kind of fun that way. Very challenging because you have to show up and make your plan very quickly and start executing. If it doesn't work, you've got to be able to step back and say, this isn't cutting it. We got to regroup and find another way, which is sometimes hard to do too.
Yeah. What are the, like, what's the, as a rescue guy, I don't know what you guys are called.
Truck monkeys.
Okay. What do you guys do that's different from like an ordinary firefighter? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess the baseline.
To anybody if I disrespected them by saying ordinary firefighter, but I'm a layman, so I don't know the verbiage, so I apologize.
No, that's fine. Anyway, and we don't really. It's like a lot of groups, everybody talks crap about each other until you get to the house fire and everybody works together just fine. So it's normal. I guess understated hierarchy, and it's not really a hierarchy. I guess it's more just an interest in people who are drawn towards it. I should be able to basically go to an engine tomorrow and function. I'll be rusty because I haven't done it in a while, but pulling hose, putting out the fire, making sure you got water supply, things like those tasks are pretty much that's an everybody task. If you feel like you've got that well enough to move on, then in general, the hierarchy is you go to a ladder. Ladders still have pumps. They still do some firefighting as far as that goes. They're kind of nowhere near as dedicated as the engines because they've got the ladder on top. Most of them are 100 feet or so. They're able to get to the roof quickly. They're able to try and, get people out of high places if they're stuck somewhere. They're kind of like not an engine, not a rescue, but they do a little bit of both. And then the rescue is where the only water we carry is just one little fire extinguisher. And most of what we we get off the truck. We're a giant toolbox on wheels. That's all we are. We've got the extrication equipment. We can rip cars apart. The fun part is it's kind of like there's an entire industry of people making cars safer, and then there's an entire industry of us trying to rip it apart. We do high angle, low angle, confined space. We do water rescue. We do some hazmat stuff. We're kind of the jack of all trades. We're the ones that they look at if they can't figure it out with the other ones. So it's fun. It keeps it very just a wild card every day. You know, you don't ever know what you're really going to show up to. So we assist PD with missing persons, drones, things like that. So it's just just a pile of different equipment.
That's pretty interesting. Guys are using drones.
Yeah. There was actually, I'm trying to think of where it was. I want to say Texas, but I don't know if that's exactly right. But they actually, they found a missing person, lost overnight, still not hypothermic enough. They didn't show up on the thermal camera for the drone. That's how they found him. So
that's very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of neat seeing some of the technology make its way over.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, rescue, you guys, so if there's like a collapse, there's a fire and there's a collapse, this structure collapses, you guys are the ones that go and rescue the ladder and the engine crews. Is that correct?
Kind of. There's like a
stirring the pot.
Yeah, someone's gonna see us and be like, "What are you talking about?" We have what's called RIT, which is Rapid Intervention Team, and they basically sit in the yard, and you basically have to get enough tasks covered. So if you don't get there quick enough, you're RIT. That's kind of the joke. RIT are the guys who should try to stay in the yard and just be ready. Something goes really wrong, they're the ones that go in and get the injured firefighters or whatever else. Our job mostly when we go to house fires is we're going to make sure we don't pull hose. We go in and we search the building really fast. Most of what we do is just kind of a shit and get down to business. We go in and we search like crazy. We want to make sure there's no people left in there, even animals. We'll grab animals. We can do ventilation, vertical ventilation if you need holes cut in the roof. Let smoke and heat out the top of the structure. Horizontal ventilation, you bust out windows and it'll start pulling some of that heat and smoke out for visibility, which is a giant coordinated effort because if you do it too soon, you're just fueling the fire and giving it more air, things like that. So, yeah, we tend to, I don't want to say John Wayne, but we tend to be the least managed. Like we show up on scene, they know we're there, and the incident command basically says, yeah, okay. Like we say, we're going to do search, and whoop, we're just gone. So they don't really.
Is that because of the level of experience compared to the other couple sections, or?
No, not necessarily. I mean, like, I definitely don't want to take anything away from the guys on the engines. The guys that are really good at engine stuff, I envy them. I mean, they're definitely not scared. They're not, you know, they'll go into some environments that are definitely not inviting. So I definitely don't take anything away from them. It's just that's not their lane. They don't really. I got tired of dragging a hose around, and it's cumbersome, and you know. So I just like to be able to just go.
I guess what I meant was when I probably didn't word that right. I meant like new guys don't go right to rescue, right? They usually do time and the other sides first.
Yeah, a lot of departments. A lot of departments will make you almost work your way to it, and some of the bigger departments, like you go to the FDNYs and places like that, like you don't get on there unless they say they want you to come on there. So it's kind of almost like a selection process. But Charlotte just had the other day, 1:30 in the morning. I guess I don't know if it was a base jumper or somebody really off course parachuting, but got hung up on a building. 100 and some feet off the ground at like 1:30 in the morning. So, you know, you wake up and you're ready to go.
Wow. That's crazy. Cause I don't think Charlotte has any, I mean, they got big buildings. They have some skyscrapers. I don't think they have anything like base jumper. Maybe they do. I don't know the exact dimensions or heights, but like, I didn't think they had anything that big, but I guess maybe they do.
I don't know. I don't know. I never heard the final story on why he was there.
That's
All I
crazy.
know is he was.
Yeah, he's way off course. Missed his drop zone.
Yeah, and at 1:30 in the morning too. So I'm not sure exactly where the thought process was, but
So, while doing all this stuff as a full-time firefighter, you also dabbled on the side with some mobility stuff for military guys, right? Special ops guys. Can you talk a little bit about that?
sure. One of my neighbors was a former pro, and I had gotten up to where I was going to try and do a period of time, a year or two, at the pro level. So we started talking, and of course got bikes, and we're riding and doing stuff. And we just decided we wanted to try and start a track, a motocross track. So we did, because sure, why not? And so we built the track and got that going, and it was all right. It was a ton of work. One of the guys that used to do some of the trainers, I guess he still does, I don't know, did some off-road mobility stuff at Bragg, found out about it and found out about us, and basically kind of recruited us to help do some instruction. So for it was probably 12 or 14 years at random intervals, a week here and a week there, would go and do. I did primarily dirt bikes. I'd do quads if I had to, do a little bit of the side by sides. They also had a couple of people who did equine, but pretty much we stuck to the bikes. So we stuck to more of the a lot more of the kind of the SMU crowd, that was going to be maybe either have that built into their cache of equipment, or the other side of it was a way for them to learn how to get out of somewhere quickly, if that was how they could find something to get out of there. So we wound up doing that, and so that's where I started meeting some of the people. I found I just found the culture really interesting. Really
Yep.
enjoyed the people. I was fascinated by the pace that they could learn at. It was really interesting to me, because we would have guys on Monday morning that never sat on a dirt bike in their life, and Friday afternoon we're doing expert stuff in the mountains that most people never see. And it was just impressive. It was really impressive to watch. It was fun. I got to ride. I've probably got a couple 100 hours riding under night vision, so that was really fun.
Yeah, that's
Every once in a while. Yeah, it was really the old 14s and stuff. Woo! But the longer I went, the better the stuff got. So the last pair I wore was, I'm not sure it wasn't harder to see at noon than it was at 10 o'clock at night. Those things were awesome.
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, the new ones are pretty nice.
That's pretty cool, man, because we hadn't met yet we weren't friends at that point in time, and I'm sure our paths probably would have crossed, because my team at that unit you're talking about, the special missions unit, we hired that company that you were instructing for to do a quick, really short, down and dirty, I think it was like a 7-day or a 5-day, it was a week mobility course to include mule packing and horse riding and equine stuff, four-wheelers, a couple other things, but there was zero. We didn't do any dirt bikes, and that's probably why we never crossed paths at that point in time. But it was pretty cool, man. Like, I learned a ton in a very short amount of time from those guys, and it was a lot of fun. I did use some of it like on deployments, like as far as the four-wheelers and stuff, like I was never on one of those teams you see doing the mule packing or riding horseback. Like I never did any cool shit like that, unfortunately, but that's all timing, right place, right time, right team. So, but that's very cool, man. What did you think about that? Did that kind of fuel other projects in your future, or think about like other things to do?
Yeah. Again, you can tell by this point, I'm not much for sitting still. So I started noticing the longer I was around people, I met quite a few people from where you used to work, and I kind of noticed the transition out and kind of how difficult that was. And it was almost like the more specialized you became at your job, the harder it was to come out and be a civilian and just kind of look around like, well, what do I do with this skill? So that was kind of what drove it. I saw people retiring and kind of, I don't want to say flailing, but they just didn't really know what to do with all the 20 years of skills that they
You can
had.
say flailing. Flailing is a real thing.
But it was kind of disheartening because I'm looking at the people with 20 years, and you look at the time frame that this happened in. You know, we were pretty much 20 years of combat at this point, and people are now retiring out of it, and they're just walking out the door, and I really had a hard time watching that because I thought it's so strange that they just let these people walk out and then go try and reinvent the wheel. So the driver behind it was to, and Fred's kind of a poster child really, but to have Fred be able to have a location where he can pass along what he learned over the 20 years he was in, shorten that learning curve for the guys that are younger and getting going, rather than lose those lessons. Learn those lessons by losing your friends.
Yep.
So the concept was, there were a lot of layers to the concept. The location I wanted, because I know they were gone TDY all the time. If I could build a facility within an hour, you can drive home at night and still see the kids, tuck them into bed, you know, maybe even eat dinner if you leave early enough. That's a big win, you know, especially if you're going to be a week or two training. You know, you're still training, but you're at least able to come home, see the kids a little bit. Weekends, again, you're not flying home on Saturday and out on Sunday. You know, come home Friday night and you leave Monday morning. So between those two factors, it was the family time, which I thought was difficult to maintain, and then the skills that were walking out the door and not being taken advantage of. And without speaking for other people, I just projected and felt that if I were, for example, Fred, because I just know Fred for a long time, if I was Fred and I walked out of the door and I just kind of was like, you know, what am I going to do with this? And it's kind of like, I always equated it to going to the Olympics, is how I always tried to kind of relay it to people. And I said, you train for decades to go to the Olympics. You go to the Olympics, you come home and you're Michael Phelps and you're like, well, now what do I do? You know, like you did everything at the Olympics, but now the Olympics are over. So, and I thought, man, there's so much more to do with that, you know, and I wanted to be able to still make sure people knew they had a real value and shorten that learning curve for the next generation, you know, because I'm sure there's a million lessons. I met a couple of people who were in Mogadishu, and one of the things that they told me was, they said there were so many changes that came out after that incident about operations, how they, you know, when they dropped a pallet full of equipment, water, and ammo and stuff, and it just went every direction they could possibly do. Like, those were all things they were like, well, that's not good. And they started to make improvements and stuff. So those kind of things, I just felt like a lot of us walking out the door and they weren't capitalizing on it.
Yeah. That's that's a good point. Like, Mogadishu taught us a lot of, there were a lot of lessons learned. Like, we rewrote a lot of doctrine for urban combat based on lessons learned in Mogadishu. They created a whole course, a mount course, right? Military operations in urban terrain. So a whole manual was written because of it. And a lot of the tactics, techniques, and procedures changed in the military because of that. So that was a good, you know, it was a hard lesson learned, but good lessons learned from that, and kind of shook out our tactics. But so you wanted to start a place. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the first one was it Range 2A? Was that the first one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that's actually when we met.
It was.
Yep.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your first range excursion, we'll call it. Ownership, build up, all that stuff.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I wound up I
I
found a
know
piece of land.
firsthand, so
Yeah, you were there for this show. I wound up I bought this piece of property. It was 70 acres, and it had in the grand scheme of things compared to the other ones I built, it was pretty elementary, but it was a place to go. It was going to be open for local memberships and people to train at, and got it going. Checked with all the people, the powers that be. It was completely unzoned land. They had no regulations about ranges, private, public, nothing. So whatever. So we build the thing, and then we wind up getting all this flack from this lady who is the adjoining property, who lives next door.
like half a mile, right? Or something like that.
She wasn't that far, but
No, I remember it being pretty good distance, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
that's fine. That's fine. Anyway, she had somewhere between 200 and 400 cats, which should raise a red flag right there. Like, all of the shelters at the end of the month would just come by her house and just and throw a million cats at her.
A sack of cats go flying across the yard.
Just like a drive-by. So anyways, she was pretty entrenched with some of the local people. In the county, there was a in left, right, guns, no guns. I don't really get it too far into that stuff, but it was like a lot of the people who were very, very much against that stuff, who were definitely donating a lot of money to the sheriff who was going to be coming up for re-election. And the sheriff who I spoke to about it and said, "Man, that sounds fantastic." And I said, "Man, I'll open it up to you guys. You're welcome to use it whenever you want." He said, "We really don't have a place to go." And I'm like, "I'm friends with some people who can do some really cool training with you. They've got a lot of experience, and I know they'd come in. It'll be nominal, or they might just help you out." Awesome. He was all excited about it until the political pressure hit him, and then off with my head. It was a legal matter. I would have won, but I wound up talking to several attorneys, and no attorney in that county would call me back. And I wound up talking to an attorney in another county nearby, and the guy said, "Look," he said, "I don't really know how to tell you this." He said, "But I'd say you just got to let it go." And I'm like, "Well, why? I'm not doing anything wrong." And he said, "Man, I try and stay out of that county like as much as I possibly can." He said, "If I had to guess at how this is going to go for you," he said, "I think you'll win. It'll cost you between $25,000 and $50,000. You'll win because you've done nothing wrong. They have no ordinances. There's no zoning. There's nothing." He said, "I would expect you to get pulled over within the year. They'll find a big bag of heroin in your truck, and you'll go to federal prison for trafficking." And I said, "Are you being serious?" And he said, "Just take the loss." I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
All right.
Really?
No range for you.
Holy smokes.
Then I wound up looking in the next county over, or 2 counties over actually. Went through the whole thing, and they said, "Well, we don't have an ordinance, but we were going to write an ordinance." And we went back and forth, and I literally helped them write the whole thing. And after months and months and months, I was like, "Are we like moving forward in this?" I said, "Well, it has to be put in with this and this." And finally I just said, "Forget it. This isn't going to happen here."
That was the place in Carthage, right? I remember you giving me a tour of that property. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. It was pretty. It was north of Carthage a little bit.
Yeah,
It was
a little bit. Yep.
nothing around it. But actually, there's a little bit of a. Anyways, there's a few things I use out there for brag, but there's nothing. And it was just one of those things where it could have been a year or two before they even made up their mind. And I'm like, you don't even have any rules against it right now. I could build it, and there's nothing you could really say, except I already learned that lesson. So I scrapped that, and then started over. I for whatever reason, just wouldn't give up. And that's when I come across the one piece of property. It was for sale by a senator. And so we put together this thing. I put a proposal. I didn't even have my investors at this point. I put my own money down, and I put an offer in. And I was talking to the guy who was the realtor on it, and I said, "Well, this is what I want to do." he's like, that's really interesting. Let me tell the senator about it. And I had whatever 2 months to figure out whether I could do it with the county and all that stuff. And he came back to me and he said, hey, Senator McInnes has a son in the Air Force, and he was at I want to say he was at where you work now, or where you're working now. And he said, you have as much time as you want. Like, he thinks what you're doing is cool, and just figure it out. If you need some help, let us know. We'll be happy to do it for you. And that was just an open door. The sheriff, the county, they couldn't be happier. Economically, it was kind of beat up, and they were excited to have something there. And so just the doors opened right up. So I thought I was making it at that point.
So just for the viewers' knowledge, Mark, this guy, when I mean he works his ass off, like I seen him build 2 ranges with his bare hands. And yes, he hired some contractors to help move dirt and rocks, a lot of rocks, right? If I remember right, at the second one. But like I've physically seen him build like decks, overhead cover for the range, different props for the ranges. Like, this guy works his ass off in his off time from being a full-time firefighter. But just to give you an idea of the blood, sweat, and tears that this man has put into this dream and this vision he had, it was pretty amazing. I was flabbergasted, like when I seen how hard he was working. But we're going to go ahead and continue, Mark, with your story, because this next one's pretty interesting, and I have personal attachment to it as well. Not like you did, obviously, but we had already been good friends at this point in time, and then you got the second property, which had. You want to talk? I'll let you talk. I don't want to talk about it. This is your kind of baby. I'll let you kind of give a description. We're going to refrain from naming the range because we'll get into that here in a little bit. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you had set up out there.
So it started as one piece of property over the course of. And part of the reason it took a while to get going and get its feet underneath it was it kept morphing. By the time I was not involved, it was over 800 acres. So it started at 220, 270, something like that, 270 acres. And it was about 840, I think, the last piece they purchased. So, it kept kind of changing as we went. And so we started off with this one little piece, and then we added this, and then it changed how we could build what we could build, and how we could do things. So that was it. We had a bunch of things going on personally that really was affecting the ability to kind of keep moving forward very, very hard. And unfortunately, the 3 people I thought were very good friends of mine for several years, I was in 2 of the one person's weddings. So we had our first event out there, and I saw, well, it started with one person. I could see them trying to manipulate, trying to steer, and the unfortunate part for me was they knew the personal things that I had going on and how that was affecting everything. Things not going well, and just having a hard time with stuff. Personally, it starts to affect you, and I guess almost more than stepping up, they almost went, watch this. The one guy started being very, very manipulative, trying to control some stuff and everything. And I basically caught him, the other 2 and myself, and got them pushed out because we thought that was the problem. And then not a whole long after that, after the first big event we had there, that's when it changed. I saw almost a celebrity mindset, like just this glow about, I own this place, look at me, And that was pretty much the change. After that, I was on the outs.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, that sucks. They have a saying, I think, about going into business with like friends and stuff like that. Like I can't quote it verbatim, but it's apparently it's not a good idea, right? So you
well,
guys are really, really good friends, right? You knew them for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that.
yeah, I knew him for about 25 years. And what I thought was going to work well was the fact that they weren't really involved in day-to-day stuff.
Right.
So, they started getting involved, and they were getting involved because it was really becoming a bit much for me on top of all the other stuff going on. But I think when they came in and they were like, hey, like we had more capabilities than whatever it's called this year, Blackwater ZX, whatever it is now. But we had capabilities out of the gate that they didn't have, and we're a lot closer, and stuff like that. So, I had a spot where we could put a small airstrip, and we could land. I had some guys that Fred used to work with that we knew, and he said, I showed him the stuff on the map, and he said, well, we can't. He said, we can't land a C-130, but we can get just about everything else in here. So we were going to be able to have people come in from other places and do stuff like that. So last I checked, it really doesn't have any of that stuff going on. But and then
not an airstrip, not anything like that, because I know because my job they use that place. So, yeah, man, that was disheartening. Like you don't really know who your true friends are until you have some kind of big life-changing event or whatever, I guess, and stuff shakes out again, right? You know who your true friends are. But
yeah.
So moving along a little bit, how long you been with the fire service now?
Just past 25 years.
Wow, 25 years.
Yeah.
And what's your rank or whatever?
Captain.
Okay, captain. So you're an officer, right? I think they call them officers. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So like you manage now more than like, are you still a hands-on guy? How does that work?
Yeah, I like being hands-on. It's very hard for me. It was a tough transition to kind of back up that step. Now I think my focus is to try to pour into the guys on the truck with me. I'm really fortunate. I've got great people on the truck with me. But I'm just basically trying to facilitate their learning and their development and growth and
share that experience and knowledge.
Yeah, because unfortunately too, I'm sure a lot of careers are this way, but there's a lot of knowledge walking out the door. And as we keep hiring, we hire younger and younger. And it's interesting, the younger generations, that's why the military guys, when they come out, either retire or even when they just get out or, 4, 8 years, whatever. It seems like they've learned to be taught and then retain that better than some of the other ones. And I'm not trying to dog on getting to younger generations or anything. I think to an extent, now that we have everything in our pocket, we can look up anything, we can find it in 30 seconds on our phone. It's as if the younger generation hasn't learned how to make a file to remember stuff. And I don't mean that as a diss on them. It's just because you just pick your phone up and you look for it and there it is. And it's almost like the really young kids, 19, stuff like that. It's like they have a hard time learning a skill and then retaining that knowledge. Like they go, okay, and they do it. Yes. They come back to it the next day and they're like, what? And you're like, oh, how do you not know? Like, we just did this.
Yeah, comprehension, like memorization, and like they don't teach those rote memorization and those kind of skills in school anymore, right? Yeah. We have this new learning system, like it's a age of technology, and for us, learning doing reports, whatever, what did we do? We found a set of encyclopedias, or we went to the library and read encyclopedias and did research. And we had to study and we had to memorize, right? Times tables and spelling of words and writing stuff out, numerous amounts of times to get that rote memorization down. These kids don't have that because they didn't have to. Everything's information's all at your fingertips. They can look it up and then they forget about it in 5 minutes, right? Or not even.
Yeah.
So it's definitely different times now.
Yeah. And it's funny. I'll catch myself doing things like that. You ever pull your phone out of your pocket, you look at the time, you put it back in your pocket and you're like, what the hell time is it? And you look at it again. Like,
no, I've never had that happen. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So tell us, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Tell me, you got to at least give me one or two cool firefighter stories, because I'm looking down a lot because that's where my notes are. We were just talking about comprehension and rote memorization. So my show notes, I don't want to miss any topics. You mentioned that your job's super unpredictable. You talked about that today. And, you work 24-hour shifts and you go from eating or sleeping to full bore, mission actions on, we say that in the military, in a short amount of time. Can you give us like a cool story, like a firefighter story or some like interesting thing that happened to you while doing that stuff? I don't mean like, nothing gory, like, pull and burn victims or whatever, like nothing like that. Just something, I don't know, something cool. You got anything cool at the top of your head?
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I know you talked about like sometimes you get there before the PD does, the cops do, right? And sometimes you come in close contact with like criminals at some of these calls, right?
That one was a funny one. Now, so we went to the grocery store. We're in the grocery store and we're walking out and we get a call and they're dispatching it. You call 911, then they turn around and call us. And they're talking to us, and we start kind of jogging out of the grocery store. And I looked at the guy with me, and I said, "Did they say shooting?" And he goes, "I think so." We're like, okay. So, meanwhile, we found out later that our what we call dispatch, where the 911 calls show up, they got like 300 calls in 2 minutes. I mean, they got bombarded with this. So we come trotting out of the store, and we get on the truck and we see people kind of all confused in the parking lot. Well, it was the intersection where they gave it was the intersection of the parking lot we were in. And so the guy driving for me says, where do you want to go? And we're supposed to always stage, right? Like we don't have anything to do that stuff with. So we're just staging until, it's secure enough that we can go in there and start patching people up. So I said, well, let's loop around here and come up on top of the hill. At least that way we're above the intersection. We're kind of out of the way. We can't be seen very easily from over there. We're close, but not in the way. So we start pulling around, and it's a bunch of little strip stores and stuff, with a grocery store anchor. And we start coming around, and this car whips in front of us, stops, and guy jumps out. We're like, what the heck is this guy doing? We got the lights on and everything. What is this guy doing? And he's like, jumps back in his truck, backs up about 20 feet, gets back out, and I was like, what is this guy doing? And someone in the back goes, we're here. And I said, say that, what? And they said, we're here. And I was like, and they said, the guy that got shot's right here. And I'm like, okay, let's grab the bags. Because, I'm not driving off. So we get out of the truck. And there was an off-duty cop there. And so there's people all over the place. And there's like a restaurant and a little vape shop, something or other. All the windows are all shot up. Bunch of bullet holes, cars have holes in them. They obviously didn't practice. And so we get there and they find the guy and they're trying to figure out where he's shot, where he's bleeding and everything like that. And I walked up to the guy and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, you're off duty PD? And he said, yeah, I'm off duty PD. I said, I saw the gun in your pocket. You're not pointing at us, so you're cool with me. You do you. And he's trying to just figure out what's going on because there's obviously some sort of a retaliation thing. And so I looked at this other guy and I said, what are you doing here? And he's like, I just wonder what happened. I was like, way too many explicits for this. But I said, get out of here. Like, what are you, stupid? He wanders off. And I looked at the other guy. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, I own the restaurant. I saw the car. that shot at him. And I was like, oh, you stay. So we're trying to figure this guy out. And all of a sudden, these two cars come whipping in the parking lot like they're being chased. And I looked up and I was like, oh, this is not good. And they both just slammed the brakes on and all the doors open. And the guy who I just said, or I just talked to, who said he saw them, he goes, they're coming back to get him. And he slammed the door and it broke the glass, finished it off. So he just said they're the ones that shot at him. He slammed the door. The glass starts breaking. I'm like, oh, my God. It sounded like they were shooting already. The guys that stood up trying to figure out where this guy's shot, they stand up, and I looked at them, and I was like, oh, my gosh, they all have little kids. I slammed the one guy into a corner, and I looked at him. I slammed him into a corner, and I looked up, and they're all sprinting straight towards me, and I was like, at least my kids are older. And it was the family members of all the guy who got shot. Yeah. They're all wanting to look for him, and it was pandemonium. They were pulling guns off of them, and it was wild. That sounds
like chaos, man. That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's different. Like, you never get. That's probably the most accurate thing we went to. Usually, you get dispatched to something, you get there, and you're like, what? What made you say this? So it's kind of always a surprise when you get there.
Yeah.
Keeps it interesting, though. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. So, all right. Well, what does the future hold for you? Like, do you have any goals or like anything you want to do that haven't done yet? I know you tried the range thing a couple times, and what's next, I guess?
Yeah, I think I might let that one go. I'm actually studying to get my residential contractor license. See about that. Just tinker with that, maybe. When I retire, maybe try and get a job with one of the teams and just travel around all the races and stuff like that. I haven't really figured too much of that out. One of those two things, just figure out. The building science stuff is kind of interesting to me. And you look overseas and how efficient their buildings are and things like that. And you're like, it's kind of neat. Like, it really isn't that much harder or more expensive to build here. But might just kind of dabble into something like that.
Well, I'm going to give you a spoiler alert, man. You got way too much integrity to be a general contractor. I'm just saying, that's an observation that I have. You need to work on that, Mark. Work on that integrity. Because you can't have that general contractor.
We get rid of it. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So maybe I won't do that.
You got overcharged, bro.
Yeah.
So just come up with a fair price and then just double it.
Yeah.
I think
okay. Make up useless details and jobs that they need. Write it into there. So you need this and this. And,
Hey, do you have anything you want to discuss that I didn't cover? Because I'm gonna turn it over to Mike here in a minute. But if there's something I didn't ask you, feel free, man. Now's your time. Do you have any? Here's your chance to plug if you have anything going on. I don't know.
No, not at the moment. Been just kind of regrouping, just kind of trying to enjoy the breaks and stuff like that. The job can kind of wear you down. It's kind of hard. You see so many people. You see people on their worst days usually.
Yeah.
So it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch some people, like lose a spouse or a kid, or they're just in a bad wreck, and the parents show up, they're freaking out. Like, so I'm trying to just kind of, rather than work 2 and 3 jobs at a time like I was, maybe just kind of chill out a little bit more and try and take just kind of like stop and enjoy life a little bit too.
That's one of the rules of Zombieland. Enjoy the little things.
And speaking of things I enjoy, the Gunfighter blend.
Whoop whoop. All right. Thanks for the plug.
That is, I'm 55 years old. That is the very first coffee I have ever been able to brew. First, it tastes great.
Yeah.
Second, I came home, I worked 24 hours. So I'll make coffee in the morning. I'll get up and I'll pour it. I'll take it in my to-go cup. I'll come back the next morning, and there's always a little bit left in the pot. Everybody else here uses a Keurig, but I don't want them drinking my stuff anyways. So I thought, well, let me just get a little warm up, and that's the first cup of coffee I have ever warmed back up over 24 hours later, where it tastes almost as good as it did when it was first brewed. That's impressive.
Have any of your compadres at work tried it?
Yeah, they did. They definitely liked it. A lot of Firefighter is really cheap, so
yeah. Well, we're cheap. I mean, our coffee is not expensive at all. We're probably the cheapest veteran-owned coffee company out there, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I
Hey,
actually
nice shirt, by the way. Looks like we shop at the same store. Like
this is my favorite sticker / shirt ever.
Yeah, that's all Mike. That's Mike's baby. He's our swag. He's our swag connoisseur.
He's crushing it.
Yeah. Give Mike your t-shirt size, or if you don't, because looks like you have Silencio shirts. If you want like a mug or something like that, let us know, man. We're going to give you a free gift for coming on our podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I do love the green one too. The green logo. I really like that one too.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Mike, yeah. I'm going to turn it over to you, buddy.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I just looked up what they made last year, and it's not that much, really. You're looking at, a couple million, right? And that is a lot of money, but when you're talking about overhead costs and everything else, it really isn't. When you look at the scale of a place like that, when you look at the size, you think, my God, I mean, they should be clearing, quadruple that. So it just goes to show you that you created something and that you had a passion for it, a love for it, and it's tied into your understanding of how motocross works and how this kind of mobility can be maximized by the Army, et cetera, and any other unit, and it's not. So shame, but
yeah. I was hoping to really, like I said, I was hoping to really give to the community a little bit. Mm-hmm. I also had a couple of nonprofits I wanted to work with. One of them, if you don't mind me plugging it, is called Shields and Stripes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have heard of them or not, but it's a retired 2-4 guy and I want to say wife of another one he worked with. But they started, basically, it's a very long story and you can go and read his bio, but he had some terrible things happen and went through some of the programs. And I think Fred and I have talked about these a little bit, that the things that are available to the SF community that aren't available to other people, maybe a big Army or whatever. And short version is he realized or found out that like big Army doesn't have the ability to get to those resources and stuff. Then he found out police, fire, EMS, none of them. You see crap your whole life, you do all stuff, or you go through bad things, and there's really not a place to turn. So his driver was to open it up to people in either military or first responder lanes that can go get the big reset they need and some help that they need. And it was a great experience. I think it's a 3-week program now. I was one of the pilots. We did 2 weeks. And made some cool friends, and it was neat to see somebody giving back like that, because he went through some crap too. So neat to see. But those are the kind of places that I was going to try to support.
Yeah, very cool, man. Those guys are shieldsandstripes.org. So if you're looking them up, they do nutrition education, meditation, and yoga, physical therapy. And actually, that was going to be one of my questions, which is, you're dealing in these dangerous situations a lot. And my question to you is, how do you cope with the stress, the trauma of your job? You're looking at military, you look like a bomb blast or the after effects, and someone's dealing with some type of trauma, TBI, whatever it is. For you guys, you're going on call, you're seeing someone, seriously injured. They've lost a leg or they're bleeding out, and then you go home and you got to do it again the next day. So how do you deal with that? How do you cope with stress and the trauma of your job?
I think if anyone were to, like, having been friends with Fred for I don't even know now, maybe about 10, 14 years, something like that.
Yeah, at least.
Known you, yeah, quite a while. And I've always enjoyed through conversation, you know, and I'm sure if the three of us are just chatting, you two would start talking about something that's very foreign to me casually. And I'd be like, whoa. If you walked into most fire stations in the country, I think, and you heard them talking about a call, you'd think these people are psychotic. Like there's nothing funny about this. And I think we have to basically, we throw it out as just, we try to find some weird, dark humor to it so that it doesn't just bury you. Because it can really pile up. And I don't know if we really do have the resources that we should have. I think there's more places opening up now for that. But I think everybody's got that one call where, you know, you see somebody and it really hits you really badly. You know, it could be, I don't know, it just you know, like you watch a parent lose a child, and that child reminds you of your child, and you can't even imagine what this person is going through right now. The struggle they've had, you know, for years or however long it's happened, and then you just watch the end of it right there, and that, you know, the stuff, it wears on you. So those are not the ones we make fun of so much. We don't joke about those things, but a lot of the calls, you know, we'll come back and we'll joke or try to make light of it, and it's just basically just to try to lighten the load, you know, try to make it so if we can joke about it, it must not be that bad. I don't know if that's the appropriate way to do it.
But I think so, but I don't see a lot of it in the firefighting community, and that just might be because I'm naive. I mean, I see it in the cop community, I see it in the military community, where, you know, you're just doing these kind of sick jokes to diffuse kind of the tension and some of the stress, but I don't see it in the firefighting community. I think it's there, and I think it's important, you know, to handle that. So you know, you have to deal with the irregular hours, you got to deal with the long stress. So how do you build, you know, trust and teamwork with your colleagues? What is it that you're looking for? I know in the military there are people who lose their courage. I've seen that. Fred's seen that, where people don't want to do XYZ job, but XYZ job. But for you guys, do you have people walking off the job say, I quit, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore?
Not much. I will say it's quite different now than it was when I got hired. You know, you were nothing. Like you were just a burden, you know, shut up, last one to sit down to eat, first one to clean up, you know. I mean, you were the bottom rung for sure. And you were made fun of, you were like nonstop. And it was a year to 2 years like that. And what you did, what I didn't realize at the time, but you keep coming back and you keep coming back, and you want to be part of this job, you want to do this job, and eventually somebody else will come along and stuff, and they'll start, after a while they lighten up on you, because they're like, okay, you're not just here just for the paycheck, you want to do this. And that beat down that occurred where you kept coming back, now you're like, okay, you're part of the group, you can sit over here now. And when I first started the job, I don't know if I ever even considered that somebody would leave me in a building because of that. The people that were not dedicated enough to just take a good ribbing and be made fun of for a while, they left. And the people who were willing to put up with that stuff until they became part of the group, they weren't going to leave you because they were part of the group. And that's changed a little bit. You try to build what you can in. Like I said, I'm fortunate on my truck. The people on the truck with me, there's actually only 3 of us, but solid. I'm never would worry, you know. But it's difficult. It's getting more and more difficult to find. They're still there.
Yeah, that's my next question, which, you know, it's funny. I was watching this YouTube on Mortimer Jadl, the philosopher, and he was talking about Wittgenstein, which is a sloppy philosopher. It's kind of funny. But to me, it's about memorization, and how everything we do is about memorization, but we don't actually understand how it applies this knowledge that we have. And all knowledge is good, you know, good or bad. And what do you do with that? But today we have so many people that are getting their information off their phones, and they don't actually memorize anything, and then they don't actually know how to apply what they memorized. But for you, I mean, what are the qualities that make a great firefighter? Is it an engineering brain? Is it someone who has courage? Is it a plethora of things? I mean, what are you looking for? What makes a good firefighter? What are the qualities? So my question is, what qualities make a great firefighter?
I've always said, if you're capable of giving 120 at a task,
Mhm.
but you only give 80 because you're just too good for it or whatever like that, I don't need you. If you're only capable of 80, but you show up every day and give 80,
Mhm.
that's what I want. Like, I'd rather have you maybe not super Gucci talented, but you're there 100%. Like, you are there. You're not going to leave us in a building. You're not going to quit. I've always said that firefighters should die in pairs. You know, I mean, you should always, go down in groups, small groups. Not hopefully never go down, but just as long as they have the desire to learn, and we have them. You know, there's a guy at my station right now. He's a young kid, and he wants to learn. You go out there at 9, 10 o'clock at night and start doing something, he's right there with you. He wants to learn, and as long as they've got that desire to learn, that's all you need. Because that's all our job is. Literally, we just spend 30 years learning crap.
So how did it work when you transitioned to, Fred's line of work? I mean, did you always have an interest in weapons? And I know you had the motocross part of it, but then you fused it all together, the night vision goggles, going out at night, riding on the roads. I mean, tell me about that. I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but were you into firearms at one time, and then that you just brought that in as a part of your bag of goodies that you could offer to, special missions units, or what?
I mean, I grew up hunting, stuff like that.
Okay.
I was never really anything, never really a big gun nut where I wanted to do competitions or any of that stuff. Just around them, stuff like that. When we did the off-road training, the mobility stuff of it, some of the people would try and get a little more into the tactical side, and it's like, no, that's not our job. Our job is to teach you how to be able to do this. Your job is the tactical stuff. I don't have anything to offer you on shooting. So Fred's taught me a crap load about shooting. So it's kind of that whole thing where I understood when the group showed up, I'm there to teach them one thing, get as much information as they can absorb out of a 5-day period, so that if by chance somewhere down the road they need that, they're good. So I never really
You've actually cameoed in some pretty cool videos we've made, shooting videos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you don't remember?
I remember.
Remember at War Dogs? Remember the outfit you?
Oh God, yeah. You showed me that picture, and I was like, oh no, that's a terrible. I forgot all about that. I'm not sure how you talked me into that one.
Good thing I don't have it on this computer, otherwise I'd share it with you.
I greatly appreciate it. Not sharing.
So
maybe
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say maybe that was after the cigars and a glass of whiskey or something like that.
So how competitive are you guys? I mean, how competitive is the process of becoming a firefighter or going into rescue? I know for the military, it's like how fast you can run, or how many pull-ups or sit-ups you can do, or how well you can shoot, the general base stuff. But for your community, what's that like? I mean, you guys are going to see who could run up the stairs as fast as possible, or what is that like? And also the personalities. I mean, people feed off of other people's high energy. That's a good thing. How much for you guys?
Yeah, I'd say it depends a lot on the actual department,
Okay.
because we're very, very individualized. Each municipality is its own little kind of island, in a way. So you can get some departments where it's really difficult to get onto the rescues. You'll spend years trying, and it sometimes is, and then you have other departments where it's like people want to get on them, and it's just because, well, that's my brother-in-law, so he's getting on it. Doesn't mean that they were any good at it. Just means that's, it's my brother-in-law. Yeah. Which happens in every arena, I'm sure. But it depends a little bit on how the municipality runs it. I think a lot of the departments, as they grow, and it's part of the process of growing too, as they grow, they try to put people, like I said, a lot of the guys that I know are engine captains, and they're great at that stuff. I wouldn't want to try and teach a third of what they, I went through all of it, but not my thing. Like, I can do it, but I'm going to be rusty. That's their lane. They love it. And I think as municipalities grow and do those things, the leadership of the organization hopefully puts the right people in the right places. So the people that are really interested in, say, rescue, some people, they just want to ride an engine, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
Be awesome at being on an engine, every single seat needs to be filled by somebody. So just be awesome at the seat you're in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, a lot of it comes down to money, right? I mean, physical fitness standards are not so important in some places as they are in others, just because you don't have that great selection. You don't have that pool of people. So whoever can ride that truck, I would surmise, versus big departments, they can do a weeding out process. But for you, how do you explain to your family? I mean, they've been with you forever, and they know what you do on a daily basis. But you said in your draft to me that you worry about your kids, but how about them worrying about you? Has that ever come across their minds?
I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely, I don't know why or whatever it was. I think early on in my career, I came home and I was talking about a call, and my wife said, "Well, what happened?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, did they live?" And I'm like, "I don't know." She goes, "When do you find out?" I go, "I don't." And she was like, "What do you mean you don't find out?" Like, she couldn't wrap her head around it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, not in any mean way or vindictive kind of thing, I just realized that that's just kind of where we are, and that's just how it is. For her, it was kind of hard to wrap her head around stuff. She doesn't want to hear the bad details, but I don't know if they live. So I just don't talk much about it. I'll talk about funny things around the station, jokes we play on each other. So I know they worry some, but they don't know most of it. Like, I don't come home and talk about almost getting run over in the road, or, like, I've literally had a guy, he came around a line of traffic. I was driving at the time, and I putting out some cones trying to divert traffic around. He came around. It happened to be a 2-lane road at the time. He came flying around, going the wrong direction, about 45 miles an hour, came around the corner and locks his brakes up. And I didn't have any time to do anything but just squat. And I figured if I can just clear the bumper, I'll ricochet off the windshield and maybe won't die. I just don't tell him stuff like that. So,
yeah. Well, let me ask you about technology. I know you guys use drones for rescue. You think about the old, I think it's John Henry, right? The the guy in the old child's book about competing against the steam engine machine, the digging machine, right? And he wins the contest but dies. But I mean, what do you think about technology in 100 years or 50 years with robots doing your jobs and replacing people? I know there's some worry, but that makes some sense if you're talking about sending in some type of robot to look for, bad guys hunkering down in a building, or a bomb detection, robot. But for you guys, is that something that you're open-minded to? It can do that job.
Yeah, to an extent.
Yeah.
I don't think we would be replaced, but because there's just too much thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
Someone's going to have to guide that thing. I think where the technology is really going to be helpful is they're just starting to come out with some stuff that's going to be, we use a FLIR or thermal, like a thermal camera. They've just developed one that's got like a small screen that'll come down in front and kind of does like an AI outline of things. So you can see people, doors, things like that. And it's mostly just like a trace of things, but you can get at least a somewhat of a layout. I think technology like that is going to be fantastic. The overall, the fire service doesn't move that fast. Not compared to some other things. I think part of it is because, most of our life cycle on our equipment is 10 years, so we'll buy something and then we keep it for 10 years. So If you look at it from a strictly economic standpoint, it's like, that's not my customer. Once every 10 years and bid it out for 10 other companies, fighting that lane. So I think that's where it becomes a little bit mired down with pushing forward, because the profits really are not, because, not there yet. But I think a lot of the stuff, I mean, just some of the night vision I wore, I think of that and I'm like, gosh, is there a way to integrate this stuff? Is there a way to make this work in that environment? Like I think there'll be some neat advances and stuff like that.
But you working on the range and working where you now in rescue, doing rescue. I mean, you've got an innovative mind, clearly. So where's that driven from? Is that from you just growing up? Or you've always had a mind like that? You want to take apart car engines and put things together? Or is that because you've worked in this community for so long and you see that there are solutions to age-old problems? I mean, where's that come from?
I think it started way back on the dirt bikes. I think really. I think, and I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I've always looked at it like you're first or you're not. Like if I got second or third, I didn't win. So not necessarily from a strictly competitive standpoint, but I always wanted to improve and get a little better. So I think that's why I look at things like that, and I think, well, this access gear is a little bit better because it does this and this, or whatever. But again, you come into the life cycles of the equipment and things like that are much slower for integration of technology. But I think it's mostly just because I always want to just try and make things a little bit better if I can, improve it slightly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where the drive comes from, really.
Well, that leads into another question, which is what motivates you to continue this line of work? Because I mean, for some people, it's money, right? And for others, like, I'm done. You can't pay me any money. I quit. Go to hell. Done. You tell your boss off. You walk off. Because I've done it 3 or 4 times in my life, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of liberating when you just walk off a job, But for you, what helps you continue doing this job day in, day out? What is that big motivator for you? Helping others?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much, if you boil the whole job down, that's all we do. Mm-hmm. Somebody's having a crappy day. Something's not going right. Pretty much by the time they call us, they have no idea how to fix it themselves.
Yeah.
So I think right now where I'm at, just having the 25-year mark, for us, full retirement's 30. So I'll probably go a little short of that, but I think right now where I'm at is I'm looking at people around me and trying to pass on as much as I can. It's a lot to learn. 25 years, I got into such a mode of learning, because that's your job, that I kind of woke up one morning and was kind of like, oh, crap, they don't know about this. And so now I've kind of reshifted my focus to try to teach all these new guys and the younger guys, like, how you do stuff. It's difficult because they come out with a very different skill set than we did. Simple things like hooking up a trailer, like when I got hired, we were like, hook that up and, do whatever. And you hook it up and you drive and do whatever. Now you tell someone to hook a trailer up and they're like, I don't know which one of these do I do? And they don't know what size ball to use. They don't cross the chains. They don't so you have to kind of step back and be like, okay, well, let me explain how this works to you first, So that's what I'm trying to do now at this point. The last few years, try to just get as much of a base knowledge to the newer people that I can. Hopefully just keep pushing the ball down the road,
Yeah. Was there any rescue that ever had a lasting impact on you?
Trying to think of rescue stuff. I think the ones that honestly really stand out are, I think the ones that really probably affect you more or stand out more are the ones that don't have a successful outcome. And I don't know if that sounds bad. It's like you watch a guy lose his child, and literally you probably showed up about 3-4 minutes too late. And it's just, and it had nothing to do with us. we got the call. We went right there. It was even close to the station. It was just, but you just watch that guy lose so much. Doesn't necessarily have to do with whether it was our fault or not. It's just the ones that you couldn't save, I think, are the ones that really kind of get to you. And it doesn't mean it was your fault per se, just the ones that didn't work out. It's almost like might come back to kind of that racing mentality. Like, we're there to succeed, but sometimes it's just not in the cards.
No, not at all. I recall a friend saying he got on scene and a 5-year-old boy was obliterated by a car. I mean, the head was over here, the arms were over here, and he had to go into work mode. He couldn't sit down there and cry. And his sergeant told him, hey, you can cry later, get the job done now. We'll deal with this fallout afterwards. And he said it was very difficult. It changed his life, changed him as a young patrolman of 19 to, he went to counseling afterwards. But I appreciate your answer on that one. So that was basically my last question. Was there any question I didn't ask, or any final thoughts that you had?
No, I loved all the questions. I appreciate the time. It was wonderful. I'm trying to push your coffee out to everybody I know, man. I love that stuff. I don't know if you could technically be addicted to coffee, but that that Gunfighter blend is really good.
It is really good.
I love that stuff.
Yeah,
so
I like the swagger. Hopefully, you'll get a chance to try the swagger out.
Oh yeah, no, I would love this. This is one of my favorite shirts, and then the green logo I love. I've got a couple of stickers. The Charlie Brown with the pano is really, I don't know why that tickles me so much, but I just love that thing.
Yeah, one cracks me up a lot. As Fred knows, I love stickers, man. So, but I'll kick it over to Fred. Mark, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being so gracious with your time and answering the questions.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Mark. Same for me, man. Thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate your time and you giving us your story. It was is pretty awesome. A lot of good points were made, I think. I saw some paralleling with podcast subject matter we've talked about in the past, Mike, like mentoring, right? Mentorship, which what Mark was just talking about with the younger firefighters, the newer guys, and some of the other stuff we talked about. So it all kind of parallels, which is, it's pretty cool. I like it. And also mindset, right? Mindset is a big one, especially for a firefighter that's getting ready to walk into a burning building and, potentially rescue some people. But I'm pretty much all out of questions, but thanks again, Mark. I appreciate it, man. And I look forward to having another cigar and possibly a whiskey with you in the very near future.
Let's schedule it. And Mike, if you ever come down, please join us.
Absolutely. I sure will. I said to Fred, Fred, I've known you so long. We've never had a drink together. I said, I only drink with people I actually like. So I would have a drink with you, Mark.
Yeah, because I thought you didn't drink.
No, I'm very selective about who I drink with. I mean, I have said before, I won't even shake someone's hand if I don't like you. I mean, people might think it's odd, but I don't like playing around with my emotions or other people's, as well.
That's awesome. Well, Fred is one of my most loyal friends. I think very highly of him. So if he's your friend, I think highly of you as well.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Fred's the guy that pulls up at the house and says, I need your help, and we can never talk about it. And I said, I presume you're driving.
Well, you said something about how these guys are able to learn. And so Fred likes to say that he's a pipe hitter, right? He's just, he's an ape. But Fred surprises me because he'll talk about something and he's very good at it. And he'll break down something very complex to something very simple for the layman. And I'm like, Fred's freaking smart. Now, that's not to say Fred's dumb, because I probably have a bias. I'll think of Fred as a certain way, but I'm like, dang, Fred really knows this subject matter very well, and he can articulate it very well, and some people can't. I know people who are very book smart. They've read lots of books, but Fred has a grasp of certain things, and I'm very impressed. So I would say the same. I'm not trying to, flatter Fred. I'm just like, wow, Fred's very knowledgeable. So very cool.
Thanks, guys. You're making me blush over here.
Well, I think Mark can appreciate that because he has an engineer's brain, right? And you're used to pulling. Yeah, you can pull things apart. You probably did with the bike parts, with the bike engines, and just put it back together. And so that has helped you Some people just can't do that. I am fascinated and really like when people can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I still want to do a ride along too, by the way. I know we talked about that briefly a couple times.
On the truck?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can work that out. You want to do some ropies? I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah. I don't want to get you fired. So like road
No,
rescue training, I probably not about, I'd love to, but probably not.
Our ropey stuff is probably kind of boring for you because we're safe.
Yeah, extra redundancy. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Safe.
I mean, we're not ridiculous about it, but we're safe. We're probably a little, we're not quite in the same hurry usually. So, but yeah, we can totally get a ride along scheduled.
All right. I'll take you up on that. I'll hold you to that.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks again. And for the people at home, make sure you comment, like, subscribe, do all the things, ring the bell, and we look forward to hearing from you. Everybody have a great rest of the day and have a great week. Take care.